Hello everyone, Pulse here, and welcome to another episode of Forging Fantasy, EverQuest Next. Now in this episode we're going to talk a short bit about SOE's stance on fast travel, and then I also wanted to add my thoughts and opinions to the newest roundtable question, which was all about moddable UI. But let's start off with some discussion about the roundtable response video, shall we? Now, pretty much with this video, they made it very clear that these guys are taking the stance that they don't want to diminish exploration by implementing an instant travel system, kind of like MMOs are doing in the recent and in the current. But they also don't want to make travel into this obnoxious and boring part of the game. There is a difference, mind you, that in between laborious travel and the long haul. There is a difference between that and the fun, engaging exploration that they're going for. What they have said with fast travel is that they're going to use a more traditional travel system with this travel network in place that will increase travel time significantly, but it won't be instantaneous. Also, in order to actually use this travel network, we are going to have to adventure forth and unlock the different stages of the travel network. Pretty much what we're getting is a flight path system. That's what it sounds like. That's pretty much exactly what it sounds like, is a very basic and traditional flight path system. And I'm not really sure how I feel like this. I'm not a huge fan of the flight path system, mainly because what's going to happen is you're going to go AFK while on their horse or on the bird or dragon or flying train monkey thing or whatever the hell it is that's driving you around the world. You're just going to go AFK, and then when you come back, you're going to be where you wanted to be. If you're going to do that anyway, you're not going to be playing the game. Why not just instaport? I don't see what the difference is, in all honesty. The only difference is, in one scenario, you tab over to YouTube, and the other scenario, you just wait a second for a load screen. That's the only difference in my eyes. It really seems silly. Now, luckily, I do think that EverQuest Next has one huge advantage over previous MMOs and its competition, mainly because they have this new AI system coupled with the procedural content generation. My hope for this game, when I heard about the kind of travel network or flight path system, is that unlike previous MMOs, I'm hoping that travel network and flight path will be a rare occurrence. It will not be the primary mode of transportation like it usually is in an MMO once you've unlocked the different stages of the travel network, and instead it will be relegated to the secondary option, while heroic movement and mount travel will be nearly as effective and efficient, but obviously it's going to keep you in the thick of it. You're going to be part of the world, and you're going to be immersed in what is there, all the content that is available. I mean, I suppose in the end, when I think about it, I'm not really disappointed or excited, right? It's as Omid said during the video, it's simply an if it ain't broke, don't fix it approach. It will get the job done, and in a way, I suppose it's a fair compromise between the two different extremes, where you have one side wanting the instant teleport everywhere kind of thing, and then you have the I want to walk everywhere all the time, always. I will crawl there if I have to mentality. That's pretty much what's going to happen with fast travel. It's the old traditional way, but put in context, it is the fair middle, I suppose. So I'm not really excited, but it is fair. So I can't really get mad either. And then that leaves us with the roundtable question of the week, I suppose it's supposed to be. And that is, what are your thoughts on moddable UI? We have, I want to find the best UI for me, whether it's a player creation, what SOE provides, or a mix of the two. That's at a substantial 53% on the poll. We have, I want to have customization options in the SOE UI, but I don't usually use third-party creations. That's at a nice 21%. I would be open to using a third-party mod as long as SOE had approved it in some fashion. That's at about 19%, so those last two are pretty well even. And then we finally have a third-party mods should not be allowed at all by SOE with a whopping 8%. Now, before I go on, thank you Lord SOE for removing I don't have a preference, because they don't add anything to the discussion. I haven't seen that on a couple ones recent. I'm curious if they took it off because they were just like, why are we asking this? But you know what, guys, I have to admit this is a tough one for me. This one absolutely is tough, because when it comes to mods in an MMO setting at least, I'm very, very split on this. On one side, you have the mods that add to the experience. They can absolutely be fantastic and helpful, and they legitimately can add and benefit the experience that you are having in the MMO. I mean, some of the best MMO features ever implemented have been done by add-ons. They weren't actually something that the developer created firsthand. It was add-ons and mods that came into play and improved the experience. The UI in an MMO is so incredibly important to each and every player, and because there are so many different players, the sort of taste variety is very diverse. It needs to be there. The ability to change your UI and customize it absolutely needs to be there. Now, on the other hand, it's very easy also to see how mods can kind of quote-unquote corrupt an MMO space. I mean, let's just go to the obvious offenders here. We have mods like Recount and Deadly Boss mods, and let's throw Gear Score in there as well. Now, I won't argue against the potential usefulness for these, because it absolutely is there. Recount is important to WoW if you are attempting to min-max and theorycraft and take yourself to the best of your class and your own playing capability. That's a really nice feature to have. If you want to take yourself and your ability to play and pump out as much as you possibly can, Recount is absolutely useful. There's no denying that. Then we have mods like DBM, which is ungodly levels of useful if you are doing tough content with others, namely like raids. And it also makes it so lesser skilled players aren't so afraid when it comes to tackling new content, especially when it comes to doing like guild raid events. There's lots of times where you'll run into a new player and they're just legitimately nervous about doing content with a group of guys and letting them down and stuff, and DBM helps shift that a little bit so they're not nearly as nervous. Now, here's where the problems lie. Recount has spawned this incredibly nasty EP buffing or boosting or boasting or loving group within the community. It doesn't even matter how irrelevant the number is when it's put in context, right? Let's just go to an example here. All it's about is the bigger number. When in WoW, I was a healer, right? I'm doing some raid content and we will fail for whatever reason. It doesn't really matter. We'd have people in there that are healing, bitching and whining, and people that don't even know how healers work, complaining about how some of us weren't pulling our weight because one person did 50% of the overall healing based on Recount. Yeah, that's a lot, right? It seems like, well, maybe they aren't pulling their weight. Well, you know what? The person that did 50% did it because he didn't conserve mana and was overhealing like a little bitch. He doesn't care about the actual encounter and proceeding onward to the next encounter or the next challenge. He just has to make sure he's at the top of his Recount thing. That's all that matters. And this is such a problem because it's toxic. Everyone has gotten this mentality. Recount is required, and then if you're not pulling your weight based on what Recount says, and it's not thorough, it absolutely doesn't show a lack of skill based on someone spamming non-mana efficient abilities. It doesn't show that. It absolutely doesn't. So how is someone supposed to sit there with Recount, play to the best of their ability, and even in terms of what they actually contributed to the raid or to the encounter, Recount doesn't show that, and then they have to sit there and argue their point as to why they should be kept in the raid group. Now obviously this isn't something that's always going to happen. You can always say, well, find people that aren't assholes. But you know what, in the grand scheme of things, you can't, one, always play with the group that you always want to, and two, sometimes content has to be done with other people in order to meet these groups. You can't say that in order to join a group, you don't have to do anything. You have to play with other people first and foremost, and sometimes that means going through this, and Recount is one of those. And then we have DBM, which is just a complete other kind of monster, and its intentions are good, to be honest. I absolutely see its usefulness here. The thing is that it's become this requirement in 99% of raiding content and dungeons. It just absolutely is required by most guilds. And it's even gotten to this point where Blizzard has had to come along and admit that DBM existing in WoW has made creating difficult raid content with their patches and expansions, astronomically more difficult. It is absolutely made it more difficult. That's why you see a lot more in WoW these days. You see tons more of like one-hit KO mechanics and these huge bursts like AoE will kill the raid or nearly kill the raid, and you have to try and outnumber the numbers game with the boss. That's why you have a lot of mechanics like that, because what's happening is the challenge that would normally be there for dodging fire or watching proper debuff timing or the timing of mechanics on whatever, all of that's being erased by DBM's ability to predict pretty much every action the boss is going to do and tell you how, when, why, what for, whatever to react. It's going to tell you everything you need to know about how to conquer the actual mechanics, and it's at that point you don't have anything to do other than execute the plan that DBM is giving to you. That's the problem of it. Now at this point you're probably thinking, well, you know what, Pulse, you don't really seem all that torn. You're obviously more negative towards UI mods than you are positive, right? And I guess you're right partly. I absolutely think that UI mods are fantastic, though. I absolutely think that their usefulness cannot be undermined. They are absolutely useful, and given the tools, the community behind a game will improve the game far beyond what a developer can do right away. This is fact, I'll say. It absolutely would happen. If you have the player base contributing to the game via mods, it's going to get better. There are going to be some fantastic modders and UI creators and mod creators that give you some really substantial stuff. For that reason, I'm going to have to toss my vote towards I want to find the best UI for me, whether it's a player creation, what SOE provides, or a mix of the two. But I have to throw in the caveat that SOE really should regulate what add-ons are permitted for the usage in their MMO. Now, Blizzard does this, but I don't think they did it to the extent required. They don't allow people to have mods which can affect the actual game space. The problem is UI mods can affect what I talked about earlier with the damage meters and DBM and stuff, because it doesn't actually affect the game space. It's all used through a chat channel. It's all done through the combat log and those sorts of things. That's how those UI mods come into existence, and those are things that are going to be there for the player to use unless SOE says otherwise. So hopefully they regulate what add-ons and mods are used, if they allow add-ons at all in EverQuest Next. But you know what, guys, I think that's going to do it for me on this episode. I know I got onto kind of a tangent there when talking about UI mods, but I think it's because it's just such an important subject that needs to be discussed when it comes to MMOs in the current and in the future. If you enjoyed this video at all, guys, or perhaps found it informative or maybe even thought-provoking, by all means hit that thumbs up and subscribe button. Make sure to leave a comment down below also on anything discussed today, anything EverQuest Next, anything Landmark, anything MMO, or gaming related in general. I'll do my best to discuss stuff with you guys. I love talking in the comments section below my videos with you guys. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you on the next one.